Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Before we start, I'm going to take a minute to review the Gotowebinar technology. You should each see the control panel on your screen right now. If you do not, it's because it has been minimized, and you can pull it back out by going to the Grab tab, which hides and shows the control panel. The best way to communicate with us is through the question pane. Please submit your questions or comments throughout the webinar, and we will get to them at the end, or we will respond privately. In about 5 minutes, this is a warning for everyone, 5 to 10 minutes, I will unmute all lines so that we can hear updates on your Achieving the Dream work for those of you who want to share. Please be prepared to keep the noise to a minimum at this time, or mute your personal phone. In order to be able to speak, if you would like to, you will need to make sure that you are not muted on your personal phone and that you have entered your audio PIN when you called into the webinar. If you didn't and you would like to speak, I suggest you hang up and call back into the webinar now while I'm doing the introduction. Finally, all of the panes on your screen can be expanded or minimized by clicking on the plus or minus buttons located in the top left-hand corner of each pane. Okay, so welcome to the second webinar for the 2015 cohort. I'm very excited to see so many of you registered for the webinar, and I hope you're all having a good week so far. Today's webinar is looking at the first year in Achieving a Dream, and I have to say your college joined ATD at a very exciting time. There's a lot of change going on right now. We were and are still in the midst of enhancing our services while we're adding new ones. Some of you have experienced many of these services already, including the Data and Analytics Summit that has occurred just last month. The President's Symposia with our partners at the Aspen Institute, the first of which again was last month, as well as an enhanced kickoff, the use of the ATD Connect tool, and the new webinar series that we've launched, which are the data insights and the technology solutions, as well as this specific series for the new colleges. Despite these shared experiences, much of your first year experience is defined by your own activities and decisions, as well as the work that you do with your coaches, which is why I've asked West Georgia Technical College to come and join us to talk about how they moved through their first year in Achieving the Dream and what they found worked particularly well. So on your screen now, you can see the pictures of people, some are a bit grainy there, but you can see the pictures of people who are going to be speaking to you today. So as you can see, I'm Julia Lawson, Assistant Director of Programs, as you mostly hopefully already know. So I've been at Achieving a Dream for 2 years, and I've been working predominantly on supporting new colleges in the network, but I also work on our new IPAS grant, which is about integrated planning and advising services, which is very exciting work for us. And we're actually at convening to be trained on change management right now. So we are broadcasting from a hotel room in Kansas City. So just an interesting bit of information there for you. And the other two people you'll hear from today are actually much more interesting than me. Dr. Kristen Douglas is Vice President of Institutional Effectiveness from West Georgia Technical College, and she's joined by Dr. Sindi McGowan, Assistant Vice President for Curriculum at West Georgia Technical College. And so just to start, I'll start with boring stuff, just some ATD updates and housekeeping. So Dream registration is opening soon, so you will be receiving an email letting you know that that registration is open soon. You'll be able to register for pre-institutes at that time as well. These are mostly institutes that last about 3 hours that you pay for in addition to your Dream registration. So look out for that email. The second is the Community College Financial Empowerment Award, which is offered by OneMain Financial. I believe the deadline is coming up, and so I've added the link in there in case you're interested in applying. It's a new award this year that we're trying out with OneMain Financial, and we've got financial empowerment is something we've been invested in for a while at Achieving the Dream. We had a grant a few years ago that was with 3 community colleges testing out various options and various ways to support students in this area. And we're now working with the Working Family Student Success Network, which is much more in-depth, much more really complicated actually. It's integrating all of the student support, financial, academic and career into one hub area to make it as easy as possible for students to get the services they need and to integrate those services. So this is something we're really interested in. So if you're doing something innovative or effective, then please, we encourage you to apply for this award. So there are 3 webinars coming up, and I've put the registration and the times and dates on here that might be of interest to you. The first one is the new data discovery guide, which we launched yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to view it because it was only sent out yesterday, I encourage you to spend some time reviewing the new data discovery guide. This is particularly interesting and helpful for new ATD institutions as they begin to really think about building their culture of evidence at the college. So really, I can't emphasize enough how important this could be for you, and it's actually really an innovative way of showing this. So I'm very impressed with the team that put this together myself. So there'll be a webinar just going over what you can get in this, how you should use it, and that kind of thing on October 14th. The next webinar will be on the use of technology to enhance student success in developmental education. I know a few of you are considering developmental education reforms, so this might be of particular interest to you. And then finally, something that every community college struggles with is increasing adjunct faculty engagement. And Lorraine County Community College has done this really well. They are a recent leader college in our network, and they're really eager to engage, to share how they engage adjunct faculty with you. Okay? So this brings us on to our own webinar series. So I want this to be as useful as possible for you. I don't want to just add another webinar on. We have 3 series already, and I'm sure there are many other organizations that have webinars that you watch as well. So I want you to send me any comments on the webinar series or suggestions for topics to me, and I will continue to incorporate them in the development as we go forward. So the plan is to hold the next one in late November or early December. Even if that doesn't work for you, you can send suggestions. Obviously, we record all these webinars, so you can watch them after the fact as well. But I want to make sure that this is of particular use to you. So please send me anything, any suggestions you have. And I will be, as the slide says, sending out a survey with the recording of this webinar to all of your college teams to try and figure out which topics are of most interest to the whole group and that can benefit you all at once. Okay, so the other way you can have feedback is on your coaching. So obviously you can always reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about any issues or any challenges or any compliments you have. That's absolutely fine. But specifically for data coaching and leader coaching, we have specific people who are in charge of those, who are really willing and eager to hear from you, whether it's just to say something's working really well or to say that there's something that's missing that you'd really love to be coached on. So there are office hours for Laurie Haycock, and she's actually just been promoted. So she is no longer acting national director, but we will fix that later. So yeah, if you have any feedback, please just reach out to them at any point in time. Okay, so this is the experiment phase. So we're going to try and unmute your lines right now. So please be prepared to stop any conversations you're having. If you're listening to music, please keep that right now. And so we're going to start by asking if there is anyone who would like to share an update on the work they've done since our last webinar. And I believe at the last webinar, there were people that were, sorry about the sound, there were a few people that were going into their convocations in order to share and launch their Achieving the Dream work. So it would be interesting to hear from people how that went, how their conversation went, how their launch went, and what worked, what didn't work, what you're doing now as a follow-up, who got excited, who didn't get excited. So is there anyone on the line right now who would like to share that? Sorry, is anyone speaking?
Hi, everyone. Miracosta College is checking in. There's a bit of an echo. I'm sorry if it sounds a little garbled. We kicked off our Achieving the Dream session at our convocation, where we shared some data that wasn't widely known by our campus community. And we really opened a lot of eyes. At the end of that session, we were able to hold a follow-up session to introduce Achieving the Dream, talk about some of our efforts, and brainstorm on a campus-wide basis to look at some strategies for investigation, really embracing the idea of a year of inquiry for us.
Great. That's really great. Thank you.
The data was shared by our students for the campus community. Instead of having our research office or our analysts make a presentation that was rather dry, to be able to put a face to it, I think really had a lot of impact.
That's a really great idea. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else that would like to give us an update?
Becoming aware. Yeah.
Okay. So
did you see that in that whole thread?
So I think we're going to mute all the lines now.
Okay.
I'll be happy to share these updates with everyone. If you send them to me through email, I'll be happy to share them out with the whole cohort. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. So we've been through the 2014 colleges have been through their first year in Achieving the Dream, and they're well into their second year right now. Having spoken to some of them, having reviewed their implementation plans, and having spoken to their coaches, there are some common themes coming out from their first year that we'd like to share with you. And so you can see on your slide that the crux of these lessons that we'd like to share. So the first is set the tone early and often, and ensure your actions align with this tone. So a good example of this is if you're moving to a more inclusive decision-making process, you should make sure that your teams are inclusive themselves, so they are cross-functional and cross-hierarchical, and that everyone has access to the information they need to participate fully, that roles are clear, and that the space is made safe for stakeholders to voice their opinions. And your actions should align with this tone. So if you're asking for deep and broad engagement, then you need to be open to listening to people's opinions that you don't necessarily agree with, and you need to be able to deal with those and move forward with those. So there's quite a lot of attitudinal change going on there. The second is commit for the long term. We have to be honest, this work is challenging and it doesn't happen overnight. So we have to be clear about that commitment to the student success goals and vision that you set out, and that it really is, it's going to take the whole team, and it's going to be a long haul, but it's going to be worth it. So maintain focus on the students. I think Miracosta's use of students to present the data was fantastic and a very good way to maintain the focus on the student. Faculty and staff work at community college for that exact reason. They don't come just for the paycheck. They come because they believe in the students and they want to help the students. So I think that's a great place to start and move forward from. So be bold. Achieving the Dream has found over the last decade of our work that small boutique interventions that serve only a few students, or interventions that are not integrated with each other, they don't work. They don't significantly increase outcomes for our students. And if they do, they're not necessarily sustainable. So the 2014 cohort colleges are already doing this. They're already being bold. They're taking bold action that really is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of engagement, but they're doing it and they're starting it, and they've got some great strategies around that. So be prepared for the data to take you somewhere expected. West Georgia Technical College is going to talk a bit more about this, so I won't go into any detail. They did a really great job of doing that. So communicate often and in multiple ways. Our colleges in the 2014 cohort, they're doing data bites, which are regular data communications. They're doing newsletters about the progress of all their work. They're doing brown bag launches, additional all-campus meetings, really big and small ways of getting to people face-to-face, not face-to-face, really trying to reach as many people as possible, and to do that, they have to do it in multiple ways. Change management training for middle management is very key. That's something that we're learning today, and it's something we've learned from the IPAS grant currently, the planning and advising grant currently. Middle management is really key to this work. If the leaders have the change management training, they're often the first people to get it, and they're the ones that really need it, yes. But middle management often get overlooked in this process, and they're really key to getting people to buy into this work and to really move on the ground the way we need to get them to move. And so organize your interventions around a theme. Organize these themes around your student success goals. Again, West Georgia Technical College did this really well. Once you have your goals and your student success vision, organize the interventions, the small things you're going to do. If you're going to do an orientation, if you're going to stop late registration, organize those things into one theme so that the college can see exactly why you're doing that and how it links up with other things. It will help, hopefully, according to our colleges, help stop initiative fatigue. So that's a few lessons, not the whole list, but a few lessons from their first year in Achieving the Dream. So I'm now going to pass over to West Georgia Technical College to speak a bit about what they did in their first year, because they did do a lot of these good things. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Kristen Douglas and Dr. Sindi McGowan now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Julia, so much for inviting us. We are very honored to be here today just to talk to you about our experience, because we reflect back where you guys were last year, and we know it's an exciting time but also a challenging time. So we just want to share some of the things that we've experienced. Next slide. So basically, I am the core team leader, and Dr. McGowan is a data team leader, and we had two leadership coaches. Two coaches. Joe Forrester, Dr. Forrester is our leadership coach, and Donna Jovanovich is our data coach. And this is just a general guideline of what we kind of were experiencing starting from our kickoff event last year in 2014 in Charlotte. But I want to give you a little bit more information about what we were experiencing at the time. The day or the week that I submitted our application in December for Achieving the Dream, to become Achieving the Dream College, our current president resigned, and he was taking a new position, and he was the one that was encouraging us all along to submit an application to Achieving the Dream and to get started on this journey. So the week that we came to the kickoff event in Charlotte, we were accompanied by our brand new president. So it took about 6 months to get a new president, and actually many of us had never met him before until we actually were in Charlotte. So it was, a very unique situation in that we would look at other colleges who are working in the big conference area, and we would see their president interacting, and we were just like so new to our president. We didn't know him very well. We didn't know how he envisioned the college, but we knew he was on board, and that was the most important thing. So we also had a new executive director of marketing and PR. So we kind of were starting off from brand new and a lot of organization perspective. The one thing that I took away from the kickoff event was remembering that this was our journey, and being in an Achieving the Dream college meant that we were going to embark on a journey that was to be for us and how it was going to impact us. And so we knew we would be transforming, we knew we would be changing, especially since we had a new vision of our president. If you go to the next slide. So what when we got back from the kickoff event, we were so excited, and obviously our president was very excited, and we talked to him about aligning what we were going to do. One, we had him and a new vision and a new president and what he envisioned for the college. Another thing was that we were going to be working on our next 5-year strategic plan. Third thing was we are a Complete College Georgia. In the state of Georgia, our technical college system has an initiative called Complete College Georgia, where we're working on different initiatives to enhance completion and student success. And then we had another project that we were working on that was called Guided Pathways for Success. So if you go to the next slide, Julia. We developed this basic logo, to help us align all of these strategies. As you can see, there are 4 oars in the water. ATD is the first oar. CCG means Complete College Georgia. GPS is Guided Pathways for Success. And NSP was New Strategic Plan. So we knew that we wanted to work on all of these things together, and we wanted to align our initiatives and our focus so that we would be moving through the water with these oars and together, that we were all moving towards the same direction. We chose this skull or crew boat kind of theme. When I remember working with our president was, should we use this kind of theme? We talked about a funnel, we talked about a suitcase, but this came out to be the one that was the one that we really liked as an institution. One of the things we tried to do is we've got, I don't know if you've heard of fat heads, but basically it's a huge big kind of sticker that you can put on different places and it doesn't hurt the walls. So we got a fat head to put on, 2 fat heads actually to put on every single campus. We had swag or things to give away to students and faculty and staff like lifesavers, again continuing the theme of launching for success. So this is what we used to basically help start off our Achieving the Dream as well as these other initiatives for us as an institution. If you go to the next slide. The first presentation, and if anybody wants to borrow this presentation, Prezi, and it's a template that's in Prezi, so don't feel like I created this in any way, but we basically wanted launching for success, and then this particular presentation was focusing on achieving the dream. This was during our launch kickoff for the entire college. We actually did this presentation at 2 different locations. We have 5 campuses, so we actually had people attend 2 different locations. This was the first time our coaches came to visit our campus, and we had a great successful meeting. If you go to the next slide. As you can see here is where we worked on specifically talking about achieving the dream, that or only for this presentation. And you go to the next slide. Here is where we just basically tried to give information to our faculty and staff about the goals that are a part of achieving the dream. So you go to the next slide. We specifically in this presentation did a lot of things regarding equity. And I'm not sure if you guys have access to the equity game. I don't know if you played that in the last, but when we went to our kickoff orientation with ATD in Charlotte, we played that equity game, and they were gracious enough to share that with us. So we played that, we duplicated it and played it through all of our faculty and staff, and it was a great hit. But when we asked for evaluation, that was the thing that everybody loved playing and really got a lot out of it. If you go to the next slide. This particular presentation, again, it's the same theme. Every time we talked about one of the things that were related to Complete College Georgia or Achieving the Dream or the New Strategic Plan, we used the same format. If you go to the next slide. This particular presentation was a faculty presentation only. And you can see it through the next slide that it was a day of discovery. And basically we did little, it's hard for me not to show you the whole presentation, but I would be glad to send that to you if you needed to see it. But basically we in small groups, and we asked faculty to think about experiences students to share with us. They shared with each other, and then we reported back out. If you go to the next slide. So we were using this with the student in mind, and we were able to use those stories to develop something that we're going to hopefully have this year, which is almost a publication about student stories, so that we can show more about what our stories. One of the things we realized is that we ask our students more information in a quantitative way in terms of surveys, but we don't necessarily ask them to share their stories. So we wanted to first figure out, hey, what stories do faculty have, and what can we get more invested with student stories? If we go to the next slide. So this was another exercise we did during this day of discovery for faculty, which is basically 4 simple questions. And again, we try to be as basic as possible, but and we're asking this to faculty, what is student success? What are we doing to ensure student success at West Georgia Tech? What are our barriers and what are our solutions? We captured all of that information through Post-it, little flip chart paper, and came back, and we're able to use that data to further define what we wanted to focus upon. You go to the next slide. This is really hard for you guys to see, and again, I'd be glad to share anything that you would like. But this was our 4 initiatives, basically Achieving the Dream, Complete College Georgia, Guided Pathways to Success, and the Strategic Plan. And it's kind of helping us to align each of the things that we're trying to address in each one of those 4 strategies. If you go to the next slide. Here I want to go ahead and give the presentation over to Dr. McGowan, who's going to talk to us about our data and how we discovered things through our data.
Thank you, Kristen. As Kristen said, we sort of started with our data review from where we were most comfortable, which was the quantitative side. We run a lot on the numbers. And we were very fortunate. I think I would be remiss in not saying how helpful our TCSG system was, our data center, and in particular a person who was hired specifically to help us with our ATD data, Margot Kinnery. So we got a lot of our quantitative data, not only from the ATD summary institutional reports, but also from some specific reports that she ran for us. You can see there on the next slide the data that we used. We started this process in September through January and looked, again, not only at those reports, but at our own institutional data. Our QEP for SACS COC was a redesign of our math learning support, and we were in our 2nd year of full implementation of that. So we had some good results that we could look at. Our banner completion reports for learning support and gateway courses, as Kristen said earlier, our complete College Georgia reports, and then we rounded that off with a literature review of primarily similar to your colleges, so that we could get some more information on what had been trends with them, and what had worked and not worked with those colleges. What we found from that was just very consistently gaps in by age, gender, ethnicity, income, depending on which metric we were looking at. And we saw a need through that to further disaggregate by programs of study for students and award level, because we wondered if some of the metrics might be influenced by specific programs. For example, we have a large healthcare population in some areas, and it has competitive selection, and some of those students take and retake courses for better grades in order to get into the programs that they want, and so forth. So this was a point where we asked Margot to get us some further information, and she did some other reports for us. It also showed us the most important thing, which was that we really needed to conduct some focus groups. And this was uncharted water for us. We had not done very many focus groups in the past, and we were a little concerned about it, but we needed to hear from these groups, not only from faculty and staff, but from our students. Next slide, please. So in our qualitative review, Kristen had already talked about the faculty and staff, the in-service, the surveys, the workshops that we conducted. I think she also touched on the college leadership strategic planning sessions that we did. So we gathered that information, which was very rich from these sources. The focus groups, and we started in February trying to plan for these, again, because we didn't have a lot of experience. So we developed our outcomes, questions, all of it centered on the student success, barriers to success, and our efforts, what they had been to promote student success and what we could do to promote. So all of the questions that we were asking were the same, whether it was faculty and staff or students, leadership in the college, all the same. Next slide, please. And then in February through March, end of February, 1st of March, we conducted those student focus groups on all of our campuses. We have 5 campuses, and each one has a very specific demographic. And we wanted to capture that by campus, but also be reflective of our overall student population and that demographic. So we didn't want this cartoon to be the case. We didn't want to hand pick. But we did want to have pools of students on each campus so that they would be reflective. Next slide, please. In our focus group data, the questions that we began with were, really, again, the 4 questions at the end there that had been asked of everybody. But we also wanted to know from the students what had been their best experience so far with West Georgia Tech, and why they chose us specifically. What is their educational goal? How do we fit into that? And that been successful for them? So we asked those 2 questions in addition to the 4 that we had asked other groups. Next slide, please. What we saw from the focus group data, we weren't particularly surprised by some of the answers to those questions. Why they chose West Georgia Technical College. We knew that it was convenient for most of them. We offer very flexible scheduling. They wanted the hands-on training, more than they could get sometimes from the other colleges and universities in the region. We did offer transfer opportunities, and some of them needed a career change and had to be reskilled. We weren't particularly surprised by how they defined student success. That they gave pretty much the same answer that our faculty and staff did, was that they saw that, to students, making the best grade was part of a success factor for them. But also being able to apply the skills and being able to support their families with those skills. Also, the barriers that they faced, we knew we had issues with financial aid registration. We know that because a large part of our population is non-traditional. They have jobs, they have families, they have childcare issues. They have to work our class scheduling around their own personal schedules. So we were not surprised by answers to those questions. Next slide. We were, however, surprised by the 2 questions that we threw in at the beginning. Well, 2 of the questions, one of them that we added at the beginning, which was what had been their best experience here. We were expecting, some comments about the instructors so far. These students, had been through 1 semester already, the majority of them. So we expected instructors and getting encouragement, and, we knew we had clean facilities and, helpful people and whatever. But what we didn't expect to find from this was all of the comments that we got about the libraries on our campuses, and particularly the librarians. On every campus, and yes, there were more comments on 1 or 2 campuses in particular, but on every campus there were comments about what great librarians were, how helpful they were, that they were caring, that when they couldn't find their instructors, they went to the librarians for help. And because the librarians are a great resource for faculty, of course, they had a lot of information about particular classes or steered them in the right direction to find that information. That was kind of a surprise to us. We knew we had great libraries and great librarians, but we were surprised that so many students singled them out. Next slide, please. We were also surprised by what else students thought we could offer them to help them achieve success. Again, we expected everybody wants lower fees, everybody wants more food, vendors and so forth. We expected that out of it. But in the descriptions in the comments that these students made, and I know you can't see a lot of them in this graphic, but there was a common theme of making more connections, both with other people on the campuses, the faculty, the staff, and other students. They wanted more face-to-face contact with advisors. They wanted more. They had tutors, which they were grateful that we offer those opportunities, but they wanted to meet more face-to-face with tutors. We had some online tutoring available at that time too. So, you know, all of it revolved around this face-to-face and making these connections with other people on the campuses. And we were, frankly, a little bit surprised by that. And a lot of them wanted their own study spaces. They wanted quiet study spaces. And several of them had said when they needed a quiet place to study, where do they go? Of course, they go to the library. So they want, you know, more of those opportunities. Next slide, please. So all of this consistently pointed to what became our second priority in our intervention plan, and what our first intervention within that priority, which was enhancing student support services. We saw that, you know, we had caring, helpful librarians. They were good sources of information, and they were a contact point for students, which was another thing that they had, you know, had asked about. All of our libraries are very conveniently located on the campuses, and they really are a hub of activities. Students go there for all kinds of things. So we took that need for all of these things combined, more tutoring, study spaces, face-to-face. Getting consistent answers was really a recurrent theme, and very, very important to students. They, I think we had several students say they didn't want any more runaround. They were going to one place for information. They'd get told one thing and sent to either another department, or in some cases even another campus. So they wanted consistent answers and a go-to person, somebody that they could say, okay, I don't have all the information I need about this, or I wonder what that is, and so forth. And so all of this became the concept that was quickly dubbed the ARC, A-R-C. Next slide, please, which is our Academic Resource Center. And basically what this is it's just a hub of student support services. There are a lot of opportunities there, again, to give those students some engagement, not only with, you know, with their course content and with research and studying, but also social and some professional networking opportunities. These are going to be located in each campus library, of course, and the services that we're going to try to house there, again, dependent on the campus itself, because they have varying facilities. And so, you know, one of the challenges that we're facing is making sure that we can see exactly which services are needed most on that particular campus, and that we have enough resources devoted to those in terms of facilities, people, and so forth. But we're going to combine advising, tutoring. This will be a place where we'll have our new student orientation breakout sessions. They'll have a general session, but then some of them will break out into the library spaces. We will have offices in those facilities that will rotate. We're envisioning that, you know, one day a week there might be a financial aid representative there. Another day there will be somebody from career services. We have a We Care Center, customer care center, where students could, you know, drop by and say, you know, what they're having problems with or what solutions might be, and so forth. There will be additional study rooms, learning labs with technology, and also just some small meeting rooms, because again, students were asking about organizations, you know, student organizations that in many cases they weren't aware of, you know, what was going on. So all of these, we're thinking about housing, well, we're hoping we will house all of them, but the most important ones on each campus. And we're going to implement this over 3 years. We're starting with the campuses, the libraries that need the least modification, because we have one library that's really pretty close to being done in this area. So we're starting with that campus. But then there are others where we're going to have to do some serious renovation in order to get the space and resources that we need. So we've mapped this out over 3 years. The coordinator of this project is our Kristen, our executive director for library services, and he will be spearheading this. But we are looking forward to doing that. Again, this is only one of our implementation strategies, but it's a very critical one, we think. and one that just seemed to come at us from every direction. Everywhere we turned with both quantitative data and the qualitative. We had a lot of students, for example, who said, you know, they didn't know that they were eligible for financial aid. They didn't know that there was tutoring on campus. They didn't realize that we had, you know, these learning labs available. So hopefully by getting all of this in one place, we'll solve a lot of those problems, eliminate a lot of the barriers to student success, and help them achieve.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, so thank you very much, Kristen and Cindy. That was really, really great, really rich information. So we're going to open it up to the audience now to see if there are any questions or comments about what you said. So there are two options if you do have a question. The first is you can type it into the question pane, and we will read it out loud so that they can respond. Or you can raise your hand and we will unmute your line so that you can ask your question in person. So we'll give you a few seconds to write your first question or raise your hand. Okay, we have our first question, which is how many students, faculty and staff participated in the campus focus groups?
All the faculty participated in the Faculty Day of Discovery, and then all the faculty and staff were required to come to the kickoff event where we did the equity game and that training.
All the leadership was at the workshop for strategic planning.
Correct.
On each campus, we limited those student focus groups to 6 to 8 people. Sometimes we had as many as 10. And with 5 campuses, we had roughly 40 to 50 students. I can't remember the exact number, 48 maybe.
Okay, that's great. We have 2 more questions so far, and the first is how did you? Oh wait, it's moving. How did you get students to participate in the focus groups?
Good question.
Yeah.
We had some help from a lot of different people. We got our president behind that initiative, and he sent a personal email to these students, inviting them to participate and telling them the importance of this venture. We followed that up with personal phone calls to the students, and they were sometimes difficult to track down, but we, you know, we tried everything that we could to emphasize the importance of this and that we wanted their input, and we were doing this to benefit them and to help them, you know, and be successful at our college. So we didn't have a lot of difficulty getting the number of students. As I said, we yes, and we also fed them. We had some refreshments. We also had a $25 incentive gift certificate to our bookstore that was given to them at the end of the focus group participation. So we had some incentives there, but we do feel that the strongest incentive was the personal communication to them.
Yeah, that's great. Kimberly, we are going to unmute your line now so you can ask your question.
Hi. So my question from Miracosta College is, so these different silos of student support who are rotating into the library, they continued to maintain their own separate offices around campus and just rotate in representatives via the schedule that you published. Is that correct?
There's 2 ways. One is the advisors will have a permanent office in the library, in the ARC. We felt that advisement needed to be in the ARC and to be centralized there. So there will be a permanent office there for the advisor. We also have a permanent tutoring lab there. So all the people that are coming in to be tutors would have a permanent location. The rotating office, For instance, one of them, career services, we only have really one person for our whole college with career services, and that person goes to different campuses on different days of the week. And so they have a permanent location at one of our campuses, but they travel a lot. Same thing with disability services, veteran affairs, financial aid. We also have certain days where students will get special help or special financial aid seminars when it gets close to a deadline. So that's what we're thinking about there. So it's kind of a both. It's kind of, we have those permanent advisement offices, but then we have that rotation with all the other services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have another question. What kind of training was conducted to prepare for the focus groups?
Great question.
Very good question. We started out with the SESI Focus Group Toolkit. We use that sort of as the base for our training materials because it has a wealth of good information. It has templates. It has just a lot of information in there. But there were some things that we did decide to do differently. We customized for ourselves, but we had a training packet. First of all, we developed all those materials, even down to, seating charts, seating arrangement for the rooms that we knew those would be in. Once those were available to the ones that had volunteered or been voluntold that they would be facilitators, we held training sessions with the facilitators and the note takers because we had two different roles there that we wanted to be sure they understood, all of the responsibilities of each of those. And in the training sessions, not only did we cover general information, but we covered the outcomes, that we wanted from those sessions, and we conducted mock focus group discussions. Each of us took a role, of a student, a facilitator, a note taker, and so forth. And we just looked at different scenarios because, again, I don't think there was any facilitator who had ever been in a focus group or facilitated a focus group before or been a note taker. So everybody was pretty green. So it helped, and at the end of those sessions, they felt very comfortable going into those situations and fielding questions and facilitating that discussion.
Let me also add that when we were starting to realize that we needed to really concentrate on focus groups, one of our sister institutions, who is also an Achieving the Dream institution, had their leadership coach or data coach, I can't remember.
It was both, but I think that the leadership coach ended up not being there, but I think it was just the data coach that day.
Was actually providing a whole training session to that college about how to conduct focus groups. So they were very gracious to allow us to come up there and participate in that training. So if you're not familiar with focus groups, ask your coaches. If they might be a great resource for you to help you get acclimated to that focus group format.
Yeah, I would add to that the data discovery guide that Achieving the Dream released yesterday, which is now on our website, and you should have all received an email about that yesterday. And I mentioned the webinar earlier on in the session. That also has information on how to run focus groups, that was created by our coaches. So hopefully that should be helpful as well. So there is another question asking to have us send more information on the equity game, which I imagine is the finish line game. So yes, we can send that. That's an Achieving the Dream. Yeah, that's an Achieving the Dream game. So we can talk to you about that, Erica. And then the final question is, did you do change management training at your campus? And if so, what did you do?
No, I can't say that we did anything that was change management. I know that having a new president come on, really he started really in June, and that summer we had an executive senior leadership retreat where we were able to really get to know him and talk about how he was wanting to manage the college, but not necessarily anything formal other than that.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions before we let you go? I realize we're running a little bit over time, but I didn't want to stop the conversation. So if there are any other questions, we'll give you another minute or so to type them in or to raise your hand. And I believe Kristen and Cindy have both agreed if you have additional questions after this, you can use the email addresses that you see on your screen right now, and they'll be happy to talk to you more or to send you additional information. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. We'd be glad to.
Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any more questions, so I'm going to let everyone go so that we can all get back on with our day and enjoy the afternoon. So I'm going to say thank you again to Dr. Douglas and Dr. McGowan, and thank you to everyone for spending the last about 50 minutes with us, and have a good rest of your afternoon.